All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of David's Saturday Night Sit Back. Tonight with me, I have Mikey. Oh, man, I'm going to butcher your name. I meant to practice this, and I didn't. Jogoleff?
That's actually perfect. Right on.
Perfect. Mickey is a coach. He's a Spartan racer. He's an uncle. He's a husband. He opened and sold a successful gym in San Diego, California, I believe. He is now the owner of Fit Foodies app. He's based here in Austin, Texas, and he's been on a really cool journey from being overweight. Now he's married. He wasn't doing Spartan races, and now you've done dozens or obstacle courses of some sort.
Yeah, lost count. For a while, we were doing one every other week or multiples in one weekend, so I have no idea the number.
There you go. So an uncounted amount of races. Welcome to David's Saturday Night Sit Back, man. Really happy to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
So talk to me a little bit about, let's go way back. I just want to kick it off with your childhood. And I found a couple of posts where you were talking about how you were in chubby in grade school and whatnot. Could you talk to me just a little bit about childhood and what you remember and the goods and the bads and just sort of set a foundation for us of who you are?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was real young, I was slim, and then I would say end of elementary school, middle school, put on a little bit of weight, went through a growth spurt in high school, allowed me to thin out, and then in early adulthood, after I graduated high school, I started drinking heavily and then put on about 100 pounds after high school. So like growing up, weight fluctuated a little bit. I was probably the exact same weight from the time I was 10 till the time I was 18. It's like chubby 10-year-old, and then growth spurt by the time I was 18, fairly like lean, skinny, whatever. Didn't have to put a lot of thought into it. I was probably the kid in high school that managed or fought against bullies, so to speak. Because when I was chubby, I kind of got stepped on or looked over, or however you want to put that. And then as I got slimmer and more confident with myself, if I saw someone stepping on someone else, I would be the person that would step in because I knew what it was like when I was a few years back. But that's like high level from 0 to like early 20s. Early 20s, probably 20, 22. I know that doesn't track with drinking heavily legally, but that's that's what
no
was
one's
going
ever
on.
done any underage drinking in the U.S.
Yeah, well, especially like after high school, I was actually kicked out of high school for getting into trouble. Started working in construction fairly early, and a lot of people in my family do construction, and they were always of the mindset if you work like a man, you can drink like a man or do whatever. So as long as you handle your responsibilities, didn't really matter what happened on the legal side of things. So I started drinking heavily at a young age because I was working like a man or working hard or whatever you want to put it. But that led to excessive weight gain fairly quick after high school.
Isn't it funny how with certain industries, and I'll just talk from my own experience, it's almost like drinking it's a thing. Because I was a accounting major, and you're working 60, 70 plus hour weeks, and so it was always a joke that like you compensate for the long working hours by drinking copious amounts of alcohol, and sometimes drinking on the job, drinking in the office, or if you're working from home and it's 6, 7 at night, then I still have another 6 hours of work, but as long as I'm getting my work done, I'm going to drink while I'm doing this. And same thing in our office, man. We had a lot of, myself included, like I saw myself gaining weight, and there was a lot of drinking, and I saw myself drinking more, and I felt like it was because I was in this environment where that's just what we all did.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, maybe when I was working construction at that, we'll say height of drinking, I was probably drinking minimum 30 beers a day. So like,
wow,
yeah, excessive.
A day?
Yeah, a day. But it so some days I would start early in the day and then drink the majority of the day. And it's not uncommon in construction. I know plenty of guys that drink all day, or they carry a pipe in their bags and they do whatever they need to get through the day. But for me, it was most of the time after work, I would pick up 3 tall cans on the way home from work, drink those while driving home. Once again, not recommended.
Road sodas.
Yeah. And then get home, and me and my brother would go through at least 1 or 2 30-packs, and we would split them. So that would add up fairly quick. It would typically be a 30-pack to start because we thought we were going to be responsible. And then we'd get to the point where it's like, all right, we're out of beer and we're hungry. Let's go pick up some food and grab some more beer. And then it would typically either be an 18-pack or another 30-pack. And like champions, we wouldn't go to bed until everything was finished, right?
Like champions,
Yeah.
yes. Huzzah.
So I don't know if it was actually going to sleep or just passing out or what it was, but we would end up not awake anymore and then do it all over again. And like you said, long hours. The majority of the time we were working 7 days a week, 12 to 17-hour days, and so it was just like if we weren't working, we were drinking or using it to pass the time. And that led to being in a very unhealthy situation, both mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially, because shit gets expensive.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Going back to your high school for a minute, I thought that was interesting that you mentioned that you'd sort of take it upon yourself to be the guy that would step in if you saw that someone was getting bullied. Did you ever get in a fight on someone's behalf, or what did that look like, or was it more just words mostly and hey man, cut that out?
No, I've been in plenty of fights. Some because of my undoing, some because of I would say some of my siblings have big mouths and they weren't necessarily able to back it up, so I was in that situation. And then also, like I said, it's kind of stepping in. So yeah, it did lead to physical altercations more times than I can count or remember. But same thing, not something that I was unfamiliar with. The neighborhood that we grew up in was predominantly Black and Mexican. I'm a white kid, so I think the first time I was ever jumped or in a fight, I was 5 years old, right? So I was fighting from the time I was 5 until, years later.
5 years old?
Yeah.
What, do you remember that one?
Yeah, so we were at a park not too far from where I grew up, and, to your point that you were talking about, prior to us jumping on, a lot of people stay in a similar radius their entire life, right? So my mom is one of those people, she probably a 5-mile radius her entire life. And so we were in that radius, not the best neighborhood in Southeast San Diego. My parents did their best to make sure that we were exposed to good things. So my sister was actually at a dance class at a rec center not too far from the house. My mom gave me her coin purse to go grab snacks. And on the way to the snack machine or the vending machine, I was jumped for the coin purse. So that was why it started and how it happened, kind of deal.
5 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where do you think that you were, and I hope this doesn't come off as insensitive or anything, but when you were stepping in for other kids that were being bullied, do you think that there was either A, where do you think that came from, that you wanted to defend those people, or do you almost think you were looking for a fight because you got an adrenaline rush out of it and you enjoyed it, or was it maybe a mix of both, or am I way off base and it was neither?
No, you're. I would say a little bit of both. I would actually for a while I would get to the point where I would get such an adrenaline high that if I did get angry enough and not fight, I would have almost withdrawal symptoms. So I would have headaches or shakes or whatever. So definitely pursuit of the adrenaline or release, so to speak. And so changing my approach for a lot of things helped to reduce that, so that way I don't get that worked up anymore. But yeah, a little bit of both, stepping in for people that were in situations that I had seen myself in and couldn't necessarily do anything about, and then a little bit about just the high of being in a physical altercation.
So I listened to a lot of podcasts. You're probably surprised. I love podcasts almost more than music sometimes if I'm not in the gym. Just listening to people's stories really fascinate me. I've never heard of someone talking about getting withdrawals from not getting that adrenaline rush. But you said it was shakes, headaches, and what was the third thing?
More like nausea. So dizziness. Want to throw up kind of feel, and that would be if I was worked up enough and then didn't get into a fight, right? So if you got a bunch of adrenaline and had nowhere to put it, then I would have physical, withdrawal symptoms, so to speak.
Did you play any sports?
No sports. Actually, the high school that I was kicked out of, they didn't even have sports, so that wasn't an option.
And were you working out at all at that time, or
no?
So that was your physical outlet.
Oh, for sure.
For movement.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously after that, I think part of the reason I got so into working excessive hours and then even drinking or doing whatever, not that that's productive, but it gave me something to do, because when I was in high school, if I had idle time, I would probably get into trouble, and so it was easier just to stay busy all the time. So right after high school, I worked nonstop for a few years just because I didn't necessarily trust myself to be by myself or to have idle time because of how I used idle time in the past.
Interesting. Did you, to the best of your memory, did you think there was a problem with getting in those fights? Like, did you ever regret it or have any shame around it or be like, man, like, what the hell am I doing? Or was it just sort of, it just seemed normal? Like, this is just this neighborhood and this school and this is life and this is how I get my adrenaline rush, and you never even felt like there was a problem.
Yeah, I think we probably justified it to normalize it, so I never really felt like there was a problem. The problem became a lot of the supporting behaviors and around that leading to legal trouble. So it wasn't necessarily the fighting that I was trying to avoid. It was doing things that got me arrested in the past. And so I was like, all right, like I should probably not do these if I want my life to change or not end up like everyone thought I was going to end up. And so it was less about not fighting and more about not getting into trouble because of where everything else leads.
Yeah. Were you, outside of your brother, do you have any other siblings?
Yeah, I have one brother, 2 sisters, so there's 4 of us all together.
Were you guys relatively close in age and grew up around the same time?
So my one sister, we're 18 months apart. So the 4 of us are from 2 different marriages. The first 2, well, boy and a girl from one marriage, 10-year gap, and then boy and a girl from like me and my sister with my mom. But we all knew each other. There was probably about a 11, 12-year period where I didn't see my older siblings, like older, because I'm the youngest, but from the other marriage because they lived with their mom and there was some animosity between her mom, my dad, which led to us not necessarily seeing each other. But both my older brother and sister would say like re-entered our life in like middle to end of high school because my oldest sister, she had a child, and then that kind of sobered her to think that like, oh, like if I never heard from my daughter again, how would that make me feel? So I should probably reach out to my dad and not be a dick because that would crush me to not have a relationship with my daughter. And then my brother came back down to San Diego because they grew up in the LA area. For my grandma, our shared grandma, got sick and was passing away, so he came down for all of that. And then he was in a position where he needed to transition in life. So we gave him a place to stay, and then at that point, from then on, me and him became like, more than brothers, best friends. Like we lived together. The first place I ever moved out to was me and him. We were inseparable for years. Now we're both married, and so we're still very close, but we obviously don't live with each other.
Well, and if you did, I mean, that wouldn't be that crazy. I remember one time, I have 4 siblings, 5 total, including me, and one of them, I forget how it even came up, but we had a family dinner. And she is like, guys, what if one day we all combined our finances and just got like this mansion of a house where it was big enough we could interact, but also that we're not falling all over each other. And at the time I said, nah.
I think we've joked about things like that, and I thought we would probably be more of like a compound, right? Whereas like multiple houses, because then you could have like your actual own dwelling, and then not any shared space. The shared space would be like lawn or like swimming pool or barbecue areas. Like, all right, cool. Like we can have like our own gated community where it's like everyone has their own house, but not necessarily under the same roof, at least for us.
I like that idea more.
Yeah.
Is he in your way, by the way?
No, he's good.
All right. We got our co-producer, Thad, and I don't think I've ever addressed the fact that he's down there, but on the YouTube version, if you're ever watching it, you constantly see people leaning over, and it's just because the dog likes to... he likes to sleep here, and he loves getting pets.
Oh, there you go. He puts himself in the prime position. It's like, if I'm here, someone's going to touch me.
Yeah. He's hoping anyways. Yeah. So your oldest sister, you mentioned she actually she was not talking with her parents, and she actually reached out to them. She's initiated that because she didn't want that to happen as well with her own daughter.
Yeah, and so I would say kind of closure, so to speak, or healing, or however you want to call it. And so she had a great relationship. This was a great relationship with her mom. That's never stopped. It was more the relationship with our dad, which like because their relationship wasn't good, that we didn't have a relationship because from the time she stopped coming down to San Diego and lived with her mom full time, we didn't necessarily see her until after my niece was born.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, I'll be thinking about that for a few days. I haven't talked to my dad in years. I ran into him when my younger sister graduated college, and then a different sister graduated high school, and they were graduating at the same time. They didn't plan it like that. Life just sort of happened, and the timing happened, and so we ran into each other in 8, 9, 10 years. And we saw each other, from not seeing each other for close to a decade to seeing each other 3 times in a week, I think it was. Yeah. And it worked really pleasant, which I was really happy about. I told myself, because I didn't know what to expect. Yeah. And the last 2 or 3 times that we saw each other was some pretty heated fights. And we were both really diplomatic and even exchanged a few pleasantries, and it didn't really go anywhere. But it did get me thinking the months after that, like at some point is one of us going to attempt to rekindle this thing, or are we just going to keep going on our way until we're both in the grave? Yeah. I don't know the answer to that question yet, but it's something I'm at least thinking about. And then hearing that, maybe off mic at some point I'll ask you a few more questions about it or something. But
sure.
Relationships, man, are just, when they end in a heated argument that was, followed up by also years of heated arguments, and it's messy, and really people are hard, because there's no black and white answer to how do we navigate these relationships.
For sure. Well, and I think it's different with, like, my dad is a completely different person than he was when their relationship stopped. And I think for a lot of people, that's the easiest way to rekindle is, like, if you have someone in your life and they're not necessarily good for you, or that's a toxic relationship, or they're more, rain clouds than sunshine, mm-hmm. It may not make sense to have them in your life. But after years, if that person changes, then giving them the opportunity to get back in your life may not be a bad thing. And I think that's more why their relationship is healed, because my dad is a different person now, and they're also different people as well, because obviously they're not little kids anymore. But I think if they would have tried to rekindle the relationship and my dad was still who he was years ago, it would have gone nowhere. Because right. Like when their relationship broke, he was heavily into drugs, heavily abusive to almost everyone around him. And so it's like, why would you want a relationship with someone like that, or why would you choose to be and have someone like that in your life? Mm-hmm. And then, fast forward to now. He's probably the most loving and caring person I know, so much to the point where it was like he almost seems disingenuous because it's so cheesy how emotional he can be. And so it's like night and day difference, and I think that's why the relationship of the healing worked, is because it wasn't like they were trying to fit a square peg in a round hole year after year or again, right? So they realized This doesn't work, and then they reintroduced themselves. It was like, oh, he's a completely different person. Maybe we can have a relationship, and it worked out well.
Yeah. Why'd you get kicked out of high school?
So what actually happened, or what legally was documented. So two different things. So what actually happened was me and my friends used to always kind of mess around and shoot each other with BB guns, right? And
Great.
So
just boys being boys.
Exactly. Like that's the way most people looked at it. But first day of senior year. I was driving out of the parking lot from school, shot some of my friends with the BB gun. One of them had to go to the hospital to get the BB pulled out. Told the doctor what happened. Doctor reported it to the police. And so the way that the police report was written up was that I brought a firearm to school and shot 4 people on campus. Yeah. That led to expulsion, being arrested, 4 felonies, a bunch of other nonsense for a considerable amount of time, and was probably one of the things that was a big catalyst for change for me, because it was like, all right, if I was going to get in trouble for this is something that could be laughable or swept under the rug as like, hey, huge misunderstanding, and that's kind of how it all ended up. Was like, I got what's called 790, which is a term or an agreement that I would have to plead guilty to all charges and prove that it was a misjudgment versus an act of character. It's not who I was. I just made a mistake, right? So that came with being, monitored very heavily for, a year to 18 months after the incident, just to make sure that I didn't slip up. And if I did slip up, then I would, without question, have to, take the penalty for what I admitted guilt for. And so that for me was like, all right, well, I have to straighten up, because if not, there's a lot of time on the back end that's risked here. But same thing, like if I would have gotten in trouble for some of the other things that I was doing at the time, it wouldn't have been such a slap on the wrist. They would have been lesser offenses, but it's hard to say that like, oh, stealing a car, breaking into someone's house, or carrying drugs or weapons was a mistake. So like it was a blessing that I got caught for that, and it seemed very extreme, but it was able to put me in a position to be able to change without actually getting into trouble, so to speak.
Where did the BB hit him? The one that had to get pulled out by the doctor?
Oh, in the back of the head. So,
I thought you were gonna say like the arm or but that's perfect. The back of the head.
Yeah, headshots. Why not?
Me and my brother, we played a ton of. I think it was probably Nerf guns first, and then at some point we were at like I forget if it was an amusement park, but they had those the guns where you could load up to about a dozen rubber bands in them.
Oh, yeah.
But we always were playing, some form of gun. And dude, I hit him in the eye so many times that we have this running joke, but we're just like, how did Mark get out of childhood with both eyes intact?
Yeah.
Like it's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, so like I think we started with like things like that, and then we're aggressive, so we escalated quickly. I think it was like paintball guns, and then we would freeze the paintballs and shoot each other with frozen paintballs, and then it was like, all right, let's do BBs. So not really smart choices, but you do what you do when you're a kid, I guess.
Was your friend mad, or did he think the whole thing was funny?
No, he wasn't necessarily. His mom was pissed.
I imagine,
but he wasn't. I would say he was probably more, quote unquote, like remorseful, because he was like, oh, like shit, I went to the hospital, this happened, and then I was locked up, right? So it's like, oh, like I think he felt bad for how he, quote unquote, handled it, that led to me getting into serious trouble, so to speak. So he was like, oh, like felt bad versus being mad.
Right.
His mom was pissed, but
yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, did you ever officially graduate high school?
Yeah. So I mean, we would say, luckily or whatever. Yes, I got my diploma. It was kind of a joke. Up until that point, I never really took school serious anyway, so I kind of cheated my whole way up until that point. But I had accumulated enough credits through all of my efforts, good or bad, to be able to make senior year fairly easy. And while in juvenile hall, they do have classes and things like that, so I was able to get the rest of my credits while locked up, and then I went to a continuation school. But because I that senior year bounced around so much, was in juvenile hall, was in a secondary school or continuation school, whatever you want to call it. And then the final month, I was released to go to a normal school, but what could they do?
Right.
It's not like they can prove that oh, you're worth graduating. So they were kind of just like, well, take finals, and if you get anything that's passable, we'll give you a diploma. So they took the credits from the continuation school, what I got in juvenile hall, and then whatever I put for a final, and said all right, you're good enough. I didn't do any of the senior activities or whatever, because that's one of the things that you don't get to do if you get expelled senior years, any of those. So I finished school about a month early, and then came back 2 weeks later to pick up my diploma.
Gotcha. And then did you go to college at any point?
I kind of, not seriously.
Yeah.
So after high school, jumped headfirst into construction, because like I said, that's what everyone in my family does, at least all the men, even some of the women. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
Jumped in construction. Me, my dad, and my brother actually opened a company. Did that for a couple years as independent contractors. And while we were running that business, we needed a lot of help on technology, IT side of things. So I went to school to see what I could learn to help there. But I didn't complete it, and I didn't do it for anything other than some knowledge to help us with our business.
Yeah. So. And you've, not to fast forward to present day, but from an outsider looking in, it seems too that you've set up a pretty good life for yourself, and you didn't necessarily need that time. And that's one thing I've loved about getting to know people, is some people, college was for them. They knew exactly what they wanted to do. Some people used it almost like as a time burner. I'm out of high school. Yeah. I don't really know what I want to do with my life. So, general education is not too expensive, or maybe they even had a grant or a scholarship of some sort. But I love just hearing everyone's answers, because I think so many people go to college just because it's what everyone else is doing. I like to swim upstream, man. I hate that, just oh, I'm going to do this action because so many other people are doing it. Well, think about that decision first, because it's a big choice. That's a lot of money, regardless of the degree, the school. You're going to be spending, I would have to imagine, at minimum $10,000, and that's probably lowballing it. Yeah. Probably closer to 20, 30, 40, maybe more, depending on what your major is, what school you go to, things of that nature. And then what if you end up not even using that degree, because you end up opening your own business, because you open Fit Foodies app, and now you got this degree in economy that you're not doing shit with.
Yeah. Well, I think not to shit on one of my sisters, but that's kind of where she was at, right? She's very well educated, got her master's, started her doctorate years, and a bunch of money into her education, and like realistically, when you get that educated, like all you could do is educate other people. It's not like there's like some huge career unless your doctorate is in like being a doctor. But for hers was like ethnic studies. It's like, you can't take that to the bank. And now she has her own business, and it has nothing to do with that. But like you said, to your point, she needed all of that time to kind of discover who she was, figure out a lot of different things for herself, and it ultimately led her to where she is now. So I don't think she would look at it as a bad investment, but she's definitely not getting a direct return on her education.
And I would say the same thing. For me, in college, there's a lot that you could get away with in high school that you couldn't get away with in college. Cheating was much more difficult. Procrastinating was much more difficult. You form a lot of new friendships. And for me, I felt like it was almost a growing up area. So I have a degree in accounting, and I'm doing recruiting and then running a podcast that has nothing to do with accounting. I don't regret that time at all. Like maybe a little bit of it's the money that I could have in my pocket. And I'm still paying back those loans, but I don't regret it either because of how much I learned from it. So I don't go to sleep at night kicking myself like, damn, that was 6 years wasted.
For sure.
It wasn't. I just think everyone jumps into it so blindly, that I hope more people think about it. Even if it's for like a year, you graduate high school and maybe you just take a year off, and just really try to proactively figure out, what do I want to do?
Well, and I think that obviously everything has its place, but there's a huge difference between like real world learning and lessons and then, something that you learn in a classroom, right? And so if you go the classroom route, you still need the real world education for most things, mm-hmm. right? And so it's like, if it's something that you want to do, then find something entry level and work your way up, because nothing is going to beat real world experience. Like even my wife, she was a nurse for 10 years, and she started school because she thought she wanted to be a doctor, and then she was like, well, that's way too much school. So we'll settle for being a nurse. But after going through all of education and graduating, she was still like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And so she had to like actually get into the hospital and work with patients and mm-hmm. do all of this stuff to build the confidence. Like, all right, I know what I'm doing. So obviously, like in the medical field, you can't just like jump into doing it without formal education. But there's a lot of situations, especially now, that you can get real world education and probably advance a lot faster than you could if you were to do the old school traditional education.
Yeah, agreed. And the only other thing I was thinking of while you were talking too was that probably my last 2 or 3 jobs I got have had some sort of stipulation in there, degree required, which I think is so funny because sometimes when it just says degree required, I'm like, does it matter what the degree is? If it's psychology or anthropology or accounting, do you care? Or do you think the degree just needs to be there? So there's also another side of me where just because I know America is the way America is, everyone should go to college so that way you can apply to those jobs later in life and you can have that income coming in. Because like I told you before we got off mic, it's literally funding a podcast that's not making any money. So I'm incredibly grateful for that job, because without it, I wouldn't be able to afford any of this shit. I'd either be paying interest on it or we'd just be speaking into my phone right now. So there are advantages to it
for sure. And absolutely, like. And I would argue for some people that the places that say, hey, you need a degree to work here, regardless of the degree, or if it's just like, hey, some form of education. There's plenty of camps that would say that the only reason that is important is because you proved to be able to show up on time at the same place for years, right? And that's what a lot of employers want. Not necessarily that you're educated in what you're doing, it's just that you're reliable. And so like having a degree and starting and finishing something shows some form of reliability. And so like that's why like when you're interviewing someone or you're looking for someone, that's a great way to gauge like, all right, they're probably fairly responsible because they showed up enough time to be able to get, their diploma. So like good for them, right? But there's also a lot of people that say like our entire education system is for that, right? Is like to condition people for traditional jobs or industrialized, manufacturing or whatever you want to call it, right? And college is just an extension of that. It is a great whatever, but I think a lot of times if they have it where it's like, you got to have some form of degree, that's kind of what it boils down to. It's just like, hey, but same thing, if you can prove yourself otherwise, like, hey, this person's responsible regardless, then the degree is irrelevant.
Right.
Most of the time.
Yeah. So you graduated high school.
Yep.
You got your job in construction, family business, dived headfirst into that. And then if my timeline is right, Was it around 2010 that you were at your heaviest?
That's probably pretty close. I would say, like, I graduated in 2005, and then I put on probably about 100 pounds within 2 years from that, and then maintained it for a little while. So I would say probably like, I don't know if that would be my peak, but that's probably when I started making changes or saying like, all right, I have to do something different.
So during that time, should we jump to that time when you started making changes, or was there anything in that period that you think would be noteworthy or interesting to bring up?
I mean, if anything, it would probably be, diving into that and then seeing how making changes maybe look back on things differently. Because during that time, I don't think I really acknowledged or thought that I had a problem. It was more retrospect, right? And even like me making change, it wasn't necessarily something that was like intrinsically motivated or something that I had inside me. It was because one of my friends was talking so much shit that I was like, all right, what it's going to do to get you to shut up, right? So like, it wasn't even me getting to a point where I was like, oh, rock bottom, I'm so low, I need to change. It was just so that someone would stop talking shit. So like, that was it.
So this was a buddy of yours, a coworker?
Yeah, a coworker.
And so it was a mix of him talking shit, and you noticed it a little bit. Like, I imagine that you recognized, I'm getting heavier, I'm smoking more, I'm drinking more. So maybe not a light bulb moment, but I would imagine that you weren't necessarily happy with those changes, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, so I grew up always wearing like bigger, baggier clothes, so it wasn't like my clothes got tighter, this, that, whatever. I was never really one to like walk around with my shirt off or do whatever. So like, I didn't see any like noticeable difference in quality of life, right? If anything, I thought I was like enjoying life more because it's like, oh, I was drinking, doing whatever, and like all my clothes still fit because I would wear, 2, 3, 4X shirts, and I would buy big pants anyways. And like part of the reason I wore big pants is because, like I said, I was a hoodlum in high school, and I used to keep a baseball bat in my pants. And so like, you need big pants to be able to do that. And so like, as I got bigger, the pants didn't really fit any different, or they did, but it's not like they weren't fitting. So it's just like, all right, just different notch on the belt. Who cares? And so like, there wasn't a lot of sobering, like look in the mirror moments of like, oh, what have I let myself become? It was more, if anything, more accumulation of other people that either hadn't been in my life and then come back, or if someone saw me with a shirt off, was like, oh, whoa, like you put on weight. Because like even with clothes on, most people wouldn't look and be like, oh, wow, like you've gotten a lot heavier.
Right.
So subtle jabs like that. And then one of my friends, like I said, not necessarily letting up and writing me for a while and causing me to be frustrated enough to want to change, or at least shut him up.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what did that start to look like? There's one specific moment in 2015 I wanted to ask you about. So from 2010 up until like 2015, what did sort of that phase of life look like for you?
So it was still, construction or fairly labor trade. So the construction company did really well. We took a really big project, gambled on it, then completely lost our ass. So we ended up shutting it down. And then both me, my dad, and my brother all kind of went our own ways as independents. I was working for a distributor that handled accounts for Lowe's, Best Buy, Home Depot, all whatever, just installing appliances, an independent contractor. And so was doing that, still working heavy hours, still drinking, whatever. But me and my one friend, like I said, he kind of pushed me over the edge. And the deal was that he would leave me alone if I could do a single pull-up. And so I was like, oh, no big deal. Like, I'm strong. I pick shit up all day. Like, I could do that all day. And when I was in high school, I could do a bunch of pull-ups because I was also a lot leaner, right? Like 100 pounds less, you could do a lot more pull-ups.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, yeah, no problem. One pull-up, I got it. So we drove to a high school, not too far from the house, went to jump up on the bar, and like I couldn't even hold myself on the bar. So I was like, oh, like that.
Really?
That was more the like sobering moment. Was like, oh, fuck, I am out of shape. Because like I said, I consider myself strong because like I work like a horse all the time. So it's like, all right, like I'm obviously strong, but strong and healthy are two different things. And I also like, oh, if I couldn't even hold myself up, then how strong am I really? So, like most good friends, he laughed for a while and then teased me even more, and then was like, hey, if you want help, like we can put you on a program. He was like recently out of prison, so he was like, all right, we can get you on a program. He just had a condition that. If we were going to work out together, that I couldn't have had any alcohol before we started training. And so like that was kind of a changing point for me because like I said, I would drink on the way home from work or earlier in the day. And so it's like if we were going to work out after work, then I couldn't drink until after. So I didn't make the decision to stop drinking. I just made the decision like, all right, I'll just start drinking later. And then so like that was kind of the start of being intentional with movement. And then he influenced same thing where it's like we would work out. And then before working out, he's like, oh, like, let's throw something in the crock pot. That way we're not, like, just eating shit after we train. So it's like little things like that influenced by him. And then that helps to, kind of see a lot of change. Like, just reducing drinking and being a little bit more intentional with food was the reality. Like, that alone led to almost 100 pounds of weight loss because that's how much I was drinking before, right? And how much I was eating out or being crazy. So I wasn't really like, oh, I'm going to go on a diet or do anything crazy. I was just living like such a jackass before that like little changes made a huge difference. But in seeing the result, we'll say like lit a fire inside me of like, well, what else is possible? Because if I could make this much change with very little effort, what would happen if I was extremely intentional with the way that I, took care of myself?
Yeah. While he made fun of you for the pull-up incident or lack of pull-up incident, do you think that a part of him, it sounds like he cared for you? Like, do you think,
sure.
It sounds like he wanted, yes, he was poking jabs, but also based off how you described him and how he got you into the gym and how he told you he'd lift with you and help you with your program as long as you didn't drink before the gym, no beers as pre-workouts. It sounds like he loved you and was looking after you a little bit. And
for sure, we're still really close. He definitely did care. I think it was a balance of caring about me and then also, like I said, he did a bunch of time in prison, so he's very, very, we'll say, Aryan nation. So it's like you have to take pride in who you are, especially as a white male. So like you're not doing your race justice if you look like that. So a little bit of everything was like he did care, but then it was also more pride for the race versus like anything else. That played a factor. It's like you have to look like you take pride in yourself and your race. And then also he did care about me. So it was like, I think twofold for him because he wanted to be able to influence that, but then also because he cared on a personal level as well.
Yeah. January 19th, 2015, you wrote that today is the first day of a new chapter in my life and fitness journey. On the left is me 5 years ago at my heaviest. I weighed 240 pounds. I had slowly put on the weight and was in denial about how overweight I had become. I thought that my job working construction was enough to keep me in shape. I made the decision to change my mindset and live a healthier lifestyle. It's been a long road to this point. I eat clean, exercise at least 3 times a day, but starting today, I'm going to step it up with the help of Christina. Is that your wife by chance?
Mm-mm.
Christina de la Portis?
No, that was so. That was someone that basically helped me get out of working construction and getting into, my own personal fitness and helping other people make changes as well. So that was kind of the transition for me from being a laborer to saying that I want to try something in fitness. And she was my mentor at the time of saying like, all right, this is how you can help people get in better shape.
Awesome. So did you get certified to be a trainer or what was your next job?
So next job was just basically it cascaded with working with friends and family, helping them get in shape. I have never been certified in anything for nutrition, fitness, whatever. Everything has been more personal experimentation with myself, with clients, and then working with people like her, people like Dr. Trevor Cashy very closely to learn a lot. So more learning from people that know what they're doing versus going for a certification, because kind of like we talked about with formal education, I know plenty of people that are certified that don't know anything.
Me too.
Or they know what's taught in books, right? Like even some of my really good friends, like they've went to school for like exercise science or nutrition, and like clinical definition or the way that you would handle nutrition versus real world is very different, and it's a rude awakening for a lot of people when they go through all of that education and certification. They realize that like people don't live in a vacuum. And so it's really hard to get people to do what a textbook or a certification says will get them results. And so for me, I opted to go, different route, and is more personal experience for myself, working with people hands-on. And then same thing, I did that up until me and my wife opened a gym. And then same thing, we opened the gym with, she had, she was a nurse, and then she also went to go get her personal training certification and all this other stuff. But then Funny part is she has all the education. She'd always ask me like, what are we doing? How do we do this? Help me with this situation. And so it was just more, like I said, doing my own research, learning, seeking, knowledge, so to speak, and then testing it and then making my own adjustments based on the response that I got.
And what year did you open your gym?
We opened the gym in 2017.
17? And that was in San Diego?
Yeah, just south of downtown.
When did you start doing the Spartan races? You remember the first one by chance?
So I think it was actually shortly before that. I think it was December of 2014 was my first race. Same thing, once again, friend that was just like, all right, basically. He wasn't talking shit, but he had signed up. He's a former Marine. He had signed up with a bunch of other former Marines, and then everyone backed out last minute. He was like, I can't run this race by myself. Do you want to do it? And I was like, fuck, I guess, let's go. So that was in Malibu in December. And that was definitely, I would say, also another life-changing event, because going out there pushing, seeing other people push, and Spartan races then were very different than they are now. It was the beginning of OCR racing, and so it was a lot grittier and not as many people. I think that very first race that we did, so I know people in other parts of the country or world are like, oh, Southern California, it's beautiful. But December in Malibu, the first obstacle was running through a river that had frozen over. So it's like being from Southern California, it's like, oh, this is cold.
Yeah.
And that's how you start the race, and then the rest of it you have to do wet or muddy or whatever. But first race was, I think, December of 2014. And we did that race annually for 2 or 3 years. And then after that was like, that's when I got into it more heavily, which is what led me to meet my wife, because me and my wife actually met on course at Spartan World Championship race in 2016.
How did that happen? Did one of you just say something to the other one? Had you seen each other at a prior race?
No, so we had never seen each other. She hit on me. It was on bucket carry, so that race was just shy of 17 miles, I think, in Tahoe on ski slopes in October, so it was once again cold. And they make you swim at the peak of the mountain, and it was like fucking snowing, so it was interesting. But we were a couple miles from the end of the race in Spartan race, if you're familiar, they have a bucket carry. That race was extremely brutal. It was about, I think it was a half a mile carry uphill and then half a mile down. So it was, quarter mile up, quarter mile down. So half a mile total of carrying the bucket. And so I was on my way down. She was on her way up, and we had both stopped to catch our breath. And the way that she tells it is, she was tired, delirious, looked over, saw me, thought I was cute, and thought what the hell? I'll probably never see this guy again. I might as well say something. So her line to me was, has anyone ever told you look like you could be Justin Timberlake's brother? And me, being the shy, nervous person that I am, I didn't say anything. I just smiled and ran away because I thought she was cute.
You didn't say a word?
No, I just smiled and left.
Picked your bucket back up. And all of a sudden had a wave of energy out of nowhere.
Yeah, I was like, all right, this pretty girl, I got to get out of here. So I left, and that was it. And then after that race, I was actually, even though I was obviously shy to talk to her, I was okay with certain things. So I had been nominated for Mr. OCR at that time, which meant that I was going to be in a calendar with 12 other guys or 11 other guys or whatever. So I was doing a photo shoot after that race for the calendar. So we finished the race. I did the photo shoot. I'm coming back to the venue and wearing just shorts. And that's memorable to her, because she was freezing, and she was all bundled up. She was like, oh, you came running around in no t-shirt and shorts. So once again, she's persistent. So she saw me, yelled at me from across the venue, and was like, hey, Justin Timberlake's brother, can we take a picture? And so I was like, all right. So that was when I got enough courage to say, well, sure, we could take a picture as long as you tag me on Instagram. So whatever. I thought, oh, perfect. It'll help promote me for, coaching or fitness stuff. Great. So she was like, of course. So I put my info in her phone. She posted the picture. Then one of her hashtags was hot damn, and so then I responded with a little monkey face emoji with hands over the eyes, and then that was kind of it. We started commenting back and forth. We started chatting. We had only met each other for that photo at the venue. We chatted on Instagram for 2 weeks before setting our wedding date without ever seeing each other again in person. And then probably about a month after speaking, we're like, all right, if we're actually gonna get married, if this is something legit, we should probably like go on a date or like see each other. She was in Torrance, I was in San Diego, so it wasn't that far apart. And same thing, like when we were at the race, we had no idea because it was in Tahoe, it was a world champions race. So I was like, oh, there's the potential that she could be from anywhere. Worked out, she was only, an hour and a half, 2 hours away. Like I said, we set our wedding date, had our first date, spent the whole day together, and was like, yep, we'll get married. So then we kept that original wedding date, and then at the time, she was actually in the process of trying to open a gym with some other people, but she was the only one that was making any effort towards it. So it was like, she was like pushing hard, doing all this, and then every time they would get together, it turned into basically just like hanging out at the bar and drinking. She's like, I thought we were like trying to do something.
Right.
So after, dating or being in a relationship for a few months and her like going to these quote unquote business meetings and not getting anywhere, me seeing her being frustrated, I was like, all right, like if you're serious about opening a gym and you want to do it, then like, let's do it together. And she was like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, why not? Like if we're going to spend the rest of our life together, might as well, get in bed all over the place. So she was like, all right, cool. So we made that decision in February of 2017, a couple of months after meeting, because we met in October, very end of October in 2016. And then we opened the gym July of 2017. So about 5 months from decision to do it and concept to open. And our goal was to open on her birthday, which was July 4th. We missed it by 4 days. I think we opened on the 8th of July. But was still a very interesting experience. And then a few months later, we got married at World's Toughest Mudder. So it was like we met at Spartan Worlds, opened the gym, and then got married at World's Toughest.
It's still married?
Yep.
That's awesome, man. What a good story. It's funny timing, too, because just yesterday I was telling a friend that I hit on someone at a grocery store, and he was like, time and place, David, time and place. You got to keep that to like bars and clubs. And I'm like, but what if I never saw that person at the bar or the club? And I don't go to bars or clubs like I did in my 20s, but now like I don't really like crowds. I don't like the loud noise. I'm an old fucking man.
No,
now.
me too. Me and my wife are in bed at 8 o'clock every night almost, and we talk to people like, oh, you want to go out? It's like, sure. What time do you want to eat for dinner? Like 7:38. Like, no. That's when I should be going home, not being picked up. But I feel like picking up someone at the grocery store is perfect, right? You learn a lot about what someone has in their cart. So it's like, oh, you walk by, you're like, oh, hey.
I didn't even think of that.
Yes. It was like recon. You're like, oh, I don't know about this chick with what she has in her cart. I don't know.
I see lots of meats and vegetables. All right, let's go for it.
Yeah.
Lots of boxes, lots of soda. I'm good.
Frozen meals and fat. You're like, oh, maybe she doesn't know how to cook. There's no ingredients. It's all just ready-made stuff. Bad call.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's great. And like you said, me and my wife. I think meeting someone at a place that you enjoy that's a part of your life is huge, right?
Yes.
So like obviously like I haven't done a Spartan race in a few years. Like after we opened the gym, we still were heavily involved, but after the first year in the gym, the business took over and we didn't necessarily go out to do a lot of those, and then decided that like we had nothing to prove, so no point in doing a bunch of them anymore. Like we're not against them. We think they're awesome, but it's like, all right, there's more to life than doing the same race over and over again, right? But with that being said, we met doing something that we both really enjoyed, so it made it really easy for the relationship. And not that like people really enjoy grocery shopping, but at the same time, like if that's something that you do in your day-to-day life and that's where you meet someone, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Well, and my rebuttal to him was the time and places when you see someone attractive.
Yeah,
it's
the right time.
Maybe there's there is some place or situation where it would be really wrong, like a funeral or
you've seen Wedding Crashers, right? That's what they escalate to, right?
I actually haven't. I did once, but I was pretty drunk and it was forever ago, so I can't even really say.
So that was the escalation from weddings was to funerals. And it was like, because like the girls are so emotional, so it's perfect. But they were obviously teasing because it was very inappropriate.
Right. Yeah. Well, anyways, that's an awesome story. I'm glad that she said something twice and that it all ended up working out. Because imagine if like she didn't say something twice, because you did just run away, and but she did, and then you got the backbone to be like, all right, let's say, and look at you guys now. So what is this, 6 years later? You said 2017, I apologize, that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
got married?
Yep.
So yeah, here you are 6 years later and still together, still happy, I hope. And
Yeah.
what a cool story,
Yeah,
man.
very very happy on our second business. So it's like, all right, cool. Not a bad move.
Yeah. So you guys opened the gym, and the gym, was it a gym? From what I could tell, it wasn't really like your traditional gym with like machines and dumbbells. It wasn't really a CrossFit gym. Was it almost marketed as come here to train for a Spartan race or a Tough Mudder or something along those lines?
Yeah, it was very very much OCR or obstacle course race themed. We were one of the first in Southern California or San Diego to have a gym tailored towards that. And people that didn't do obstacle course racing, I think they would just like, oh, it's like a ninja gym. So it was kind of like a mix between, obviously like Ninja Warriors, all obstacle stuff anyways.
Yeah.
So, people that knew obstacles would look at it and be like, oh, this is perfect. And then everyone else that just walked in was like, oh, it's a CrossFit gym. Because it was like rigs, free weights, rowers, assault bikes, a decent amount of turf, plus we had an outdoor area. So people that were into CrossFit walk in and that's what they would see because that's what they want to see. It's like, oh, great. It's all, barbells, dumbbells, functional fitness. But we also had, we'll say, very, very aggressive rigs. We had rigs that, had more than a 50-degree incline for climbing straight up. So we had some that went from 8 feet to 17 feet tall in a 4-foot span. So like very aggressive incline for monkey bars, so to speak. Plus tall ropes. And then we had one of our friends build some obstacles. So we were doing our best to always stay on the quote unquote cutting edge for Spartan or Tough Mudder. So like we were friends with a bunch of people that worked there. So we would knew what obstacles were coming out and we would try to build them or recreate them at our place so people can come and train specifically for what they would be doing on a race.
How'd it do?
What do you mean?
The gym, how it was a successful business, would you say?
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
Was a big part of it the city? Is San Diego a pretty big hub for races coming in and setting up shop there for?
I would say San Diego can be very, very active. The Spartan community is awesome there. I would say that the word of advice if for anyone looking to open like a like Spartan gym or OCR gym or like calisthenics style gym is that a lot of those people take pride in training outside, so they don't really want to pay for a facility because like that's their whole thing. It's like, oh, I can train anywhere, so
right.
Why would I train somewhere? I mean, it was very successful. The reason it was successful though is because we fell on our face and we're like, we have to do something different. So like we opened with the intention of being, basically a open training facility. So hey, we were open from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Like I said, it was just me and my wife, and that's why we live there because those are extreme hours for just two people.
Yep.
So I was like, all right, we'll just be right here. And we struggled a lot in the beginning to get the gym off the ground. We were very much of the field of dreams mindset. It's like, oh, if we build it, they will come. And we were both very involved in the community. So I was like, oh, if you had a gym or if I just had a place to train, I would come. But then, you give people what they want. They don't necessarily always take it. So I was like, all right, we have to figure something else out. And I would say it was both, a slap in the face and a blessing at the same time because it forced us to learn a lot about business really fast because we didn't have the advantage of a long financial runway, right? So like each month it was like, oh, fuck, we have to do something to make this work. Otherwise we're really out. So that actually led to, same thing. I don't know if this is like a good or a bad thing. But in the very beginning, it was so slow that we actually, one of our members saw a gym launch ad with Alex Hermosi, whatever, and was like, you should call this guy. Cause that's how empty the gym was. I was like, oh, that's nice. So we called him, we signed up, learned a lot from him about, sales, marketing, how to make the gym successful, profitable, took everything that he taught us, and implemented it in the gym. And saw massive success very quickly. And so we did that, and then we also made some slight changes where because we successfully sold the gym after having it for 3 years, so it's a pretty quick turnaround for brick and mortar business to have and then turn. But part of the reason that it was a success or it was valuable or someone wanted it was that the majority of our business actually didn't even come from the gym. So people would come in and we would sell them on working remotely. So 73% of our business didn't even come into the facility. Because
Oh.
they would walk in and they would be like, oh, like, I love this. And I would just say, hey, look, we can teach you to train here. Or we can teach you to train anywhere. Where would you like to train? Like, I have a gym in my apartment. Perfect. Pay us and I'll teach you how to train there. So we would just give them workouts and meal plans and teach them how to develop, lifestyle habits outside of just coming to our facility. So we pitched it in the sale as like, hey, you can be stuck in a slave to here, or you can train whenever, wherever. And that worked really well. So the majority of our business didn't actually train at our facility, which was nice because then it was basically like we had our own gym. So me and my wife got to train there, which was amazing, friends and family. But then when we sold the gym, basically what happened was we sold our membership base. And so all of our reoccurring customers that weren't coming into the gym, that's what we sold, not the facility itself.
Including sorry to interrupt you, but would that include the 73% remote, or were you able to take those people with you?
No, so that's what we sold, was that membership base.
Gotcha. The whole 100%, the in-person people as well as the...
No, so like the bigger part of the purchase was the remote people. Because like the company that bought was actually based in Austin, Texas. So like they bought our membership base and they weren't in Southern California.
Right.
And so what we did was we converted the remaining 17% to remote, or gave them a buyout option. So he sat down with that percentage of people and was like, hey, look, like this is what we're doing. You have an amazing opportunity to work with an amazing company that is going to be taking over for us. If you want, you can do that, and they'll honor the length of your contract. It'll just be not training at the facility. Or we'll take whatever you have left in your contract and we'll put it towards paying for another gym if you want, right? To try to make good with everyone. Yep. And so luckily everyone was like, all right, yeah, like we trust you, so we'll do it. So they went, and the company still holds majority of the membership, so it's worked out really well for them. And then we got to liquidate the facility. So like nice. we sold, and then we liquidated the facility. Timing worked out beautifully because this was like right at the precipice for COVID. So like we signed or made everything official for selling the gym basically the day that they shut everything down. So like our business like shut down or transferred ownership when that happened. And then fast forward a couple weeks later, like all gyms are closed. Every fitness thing is sold out. And now we're selling all of our fitness equipment. So we auctioned all of our fitness equipment off, or all like the gym equipment. We liquidated the facility, but the auction did extremely well because nowhere had anything. Everything was sold out of dumbbells, barbells, whatever. It's like that's all we had. It was all like, shit that people could train with at the house. So it was perfect timing, like you said, time, place.
Yeah.
So it was perfect there. And then from that, we decided that we wanted to travel. Our lease was up in our apartment, so we decided to travel. The company that actually bought out our membership base brought me on to run their sales and marketing. So I did that for a 1-year contract to help them continue to grow. Amazing opportunity. And then after that, did sales, coaching, consulting for a little while, allowed us to be able to continue to travel, and then give us a good base to be able to develop Fit Foodies, which is our current business now. And so it's everything that we've learned over the years of getting to where we are, and teaching people how to be able to eat the things that they want, eat the things that they enjoy to build a body that they want, versus living very restrictively. And so it's almost the exact opposite of owning the gym, because in the gym it's all fitness forward. This is all food mindset focus, because the reality is like training is the easy part. Like people can YouTube anything, they can figure out how to move around. Like people can go for a walk. Like you don't have to be a genius to figure out how to move your body, but learning how to identify the things that you enjoy eating and how to use those as tools to build the body that you want takes a little bit more finesse. And so like that's something that we enjoy, and so like that's the main focus for our current business. Gotcha.
That's cool. So you sold the gym. You did were you traveling the year that you were also working as the sales and marketing? Was that a remote job, so you were able just to move around the country while also working for them 8 to 5 or whatever? That's pretty cool, man. And the timing, you read my mind, because in my head I was thinking, all right, they opened somewhere in 2017. He mentioned 3 years. I know the pandemic's going to be coming up. At what point did they exit? So that's cool that all worked out. And Same thing in Sacramento. There was only one gym that stayed open the entire pandemic, and I ended up not even going because, again, going back to an old man and not liking crowds. One of my buddies, he found out about it, and so he texted me and he's like, "Hey, look at this! I found a gym that's open." And then he stood on top of one of the bench presses and he turned on his video and just did a 360, and all of Sacramento in this place. There's a line of people around the perimeter of the gym, and when someone got off a piece of equipment, like they would all just go, and they didn't even care if it was a chest machine, a back. Like people were just hungry to move because everything else was shut down.
For sure, it's almost like a Black Friday deal where it's like, oh, like just mob of people. You're like, oh, this is horrible. And that or a Taylor Swift concert. You're like, oh, like there's no way that I'd put myself in that situation.
I didn't even bother trying because I didn't want to be one. I like to, I'm spoiled, I guess. I like to be able to say, okay, I want to squat next, so let's go find a squat rack. There's just too many people. So I found a parking garage that was all outdoors, and it was in a business area, so it was empty. And I would run stairs, and then at the top I'd do lunges, squats, and body weight push-ups, and then run back down the stairs, and then run back up the stairs. And there was like me and it wasn't well.
Okay. That sounds like that's how we used to train when we did OCI racing.
It was. Some days it was miserable. Some days it was super fun. The fun days was when there'd be a group of people who all sort of had the same idea. So we didn't know each other, but we all showed up at this parking garage. Some of us had been there already. Maybe some people were on their way out. And we'd all end up chatting and talk about our workouts, or we might even work out together, whatnot. And so for me, and I think even those people, like I never even exchanged names or numbers with any of them. I think that we were all just like, we were looking for that human connection, and it was like, thank God we can get out of our house, talk to another person, get a workout and get a sweat. We're outdoors. This feels sort of good. We're used to working out inside. So there was some miserable aspects to it, but there is also just like, I'm out of the fucking house for a little bit, communicating with other humans. So that was nice.
For sure. I think for my wife and I, it was a very interesting transition because we went from basically like having our own like custom built facility for ourselves to train and do whatever we wanted to everything being shut down and us being locked in our apartment or traveling around. So it's like, all right, how do we go from having our own facility that we built and loved to making it work with a few dumbbells in the house as we travel around or, on an assault bike. So it's like, oh, this is very different.
Yeah.
But fun.
There's one guy I'm trying to get on who, he supports his family. He has a wife, 3 kids, and he supports his family through, I'm not really sure how it works, but his YouTube videos, his Instagram videos. And so what I think is fascinating about him and anyone else who's getting all the revenue that way is that their revenue, for how they pay their bills, is predicated on their body looking good. Yeah. So for people like him, I'm like, what did you do during the pandemic to, that must have been scary. Because for me, if I stop working out and I gain a little bit of weight, I'm not going to, in turn, not be able to feed my kids. There's no reciprocal effects. But for him, what a mind fuck that must have been to just be like, I have kids I need to feed, and my gym is closed, and I got to post something with me shirtless looking good on Instagram today. So what do I do to maintain that? So we'll see. But that's him. He's not even on here yet, so let's focus on you. You made a post really recently. I think it was just 2 or 3 days ago or 2 or 3 posts ago, but you were talking about essentially how, when you started to lean down and get healthy, it's not because you magically were able to get 25, 26, 27 hours in your day. You still only have 24 hours, but you got a lot more intentional about how you spend that time when you're awake or asleep or whatnot. But habits are so ingrained, it's easier said than done, right? Sure. To say I want to drink less, I want to smoke less, I want to lose some weight, I want to gain some muscle, whatever the goal is for the audience that listens to this particular episode. So when you have the moment of your friends laughing at you, or maybe it's even a self-realization of I want to change something. What would you advise for the beginning of that process?
So I think the simplest answer is, you can obviously identify a habit that you want to, change or eliminate, but in doing so, you can't just stop something. You have to put something in place of it for most people, right? It's a lot easier, just saying I'm going to stop drinking. It's all right, well, what are you going to do instead, right? Because there's probably a lot of times in the day, week, month where you rely on a drink, right? It's come home from work, I unwind, or this happens, I do that. So it's all right, cool. When those things happen, what are you going to do? You have to identify something that's going to take that place.
whether it's like, and it doesn't even have to be like the same type of thing. It could just be go for a walk or do whatever, right? So it's like, hey, when I get home from work, I need to unwind. Rather than having a drink, I'll go for a walk, or I'll have a Topo Chico instead of a beer, or like whatever it is. For me, when I was cutting down on drinking, it was like I just drank more coffee. Because it's like, all right, I enjoy coffee and whatever. Probably not the healthiest thing to replace, but like it helped with changing the habit, right? And so it's just identifying the thing that you want to change and then testing out ways of replacing that habit or doing something in place to reduce the habit, right? You can obviously, like, it depends on what you're trying to do, the goal you're trying to accomplish. So it's like, it's a very open-ended, broad question to be able to, like, oh, this is the perfect thing. But like, if you were to look at it in regards to like a framework or foundation, it's like, hey, I need to, move more. Then it's like, all right, well, how are you going to move more, or when are you the most sedentary, right? It's like, all right, look, I come home from work and I just don't do anything. So, all right, when you come home from work, can you go for a walk? Great, you can. Great, will you go for a walk? Because like the difference between what you can do and what you will do are two different things. So like in developing habits, it's like being realistic with the expectation management of like, okay, if you have the worst day in the world, are you still going to go for a walk, or what can you do? And like, as weird as it sounds, go as super dark. Like, what's worst case scenario? Because everyone, when they try to make change, they always go best case, right? It's like, oh, look, it's perfect. I'll prep all my meals on Sunday, and then I'll do this, and it'll be all sunshine and rainbows, and then like life happens. And so if you take a look at like, all right, worst case is I work a 12-hour shift. What am I going to do? And then you have a plan for the bad side of things, which makes it a lot easier when things go good to just stick with something. But identifying the change that you want, finding something simple that you can test, and then realize that you're going to have to keep testing and retesting and trying new things, because what works now won't work in a few years, won't work, whatever. Like, I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is they try to do something that worked in a different chapter in their life, and now they're in a different life circumstance, and they wonder why what worked when they were 19 with no kids doesn't work now when they have 3 kids and they're 40 years old. It's like, well, of course it won't work, right? But hopefully that answers your question. It's just like, keep things simple, identify the habit or the thing that you want to change, and find something that can take its place.
Yeah, I like what you said too. Like, even if coffee isn't the most healthiest replacement in the world, it was healthier than the beer.
Yeah.
I think it would be a lot more healthy to drink 7 cups of coffee in a day than it would be to drink 30 beers in a day. So if at least you're getting a step in the right direction. And I have a friend who is an AA, and she was telling me that for her, whatever the vice was, as long as drinking didn't happen, she was content with that. So she was like, even if it's sex, like if I'm craving a drink and I could hook up with someone that will get me that dopamine hit that I like, do I feel good about the one night stand or whatever? Like, maybe it ends up being super fun in the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, maybe it's
You have a gift that keeps giving.
But
that's worst case.
There's that. But for her, she was just like, I'm determined to not drink, and so whatever that replacement is, that's sort of her on my lowest days when I'm really tempted to pick up that can. It's just like, what the fuck do I need, And so I think a part of it too is just like, how hungry are you for this change? Like, okay, you've realized it. I'm drinking 30 beers a day. I'm 100 pounds heavier than I used to be. I want to change something. Now, how serious are you about this? Is it just like a fleeting thought? Because in the moment you're super hungover, or like, are you actually ready to, what's your why, I guess? And that's, I didn't mean to transition to this, but you did mention that a big part of your journey was your niece and nephew. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the motivation is to live the life you live while also thinking of them?
Yeah, for sure.
And before you start answering, I'm sorry, do you want another beer?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Of course. Cheers. Why not? But I think for while you grab that, I got one more sip. But I think what started for me is that when I was probably at my worst, so to speak, in regards to habits, not necessarily my heaviest, but I was still not necessarily making the best choices. I moved in with my sister because she had recently got divorced, and we were doing our best to help her raise my niece. And seeing how the life choices I made affected the choices that she made on a day-to-day basis, right? And so like, not saying that I'm personally responsible for certain things, but my niece also gained a considerable amount of weight with habits that I have no doubt that we helped her develop or reinforce when we were living together. And so it was like realizing that those actions impact the people around us is like, oh, like I should change these things if I really want better for them. And then a couple years later, nephew was born, and same thing. It was like I would rather be the person that I would want him to be from the start versus make the same mistakes that I did when I was impacting my niece's life, if that makes sense.
Definitely. So yeah, one, I was going to try to summarize how you answered the first question. What can you do? What's the replacement? Or that was more what it was. What's the replacement going to be for either the time, the thing you're drinking, eating, whatever it may be? Two, it's funny, I've had this book on my bookshelf for, I think I bought it during the pandemic. So it's been collecting dust for 3 years. It's Simon Sinek's Start With Why.
Oh, yeah.
And so I haven't read it, but I'm pretty sure I can conceptualize what most of the book is going to be about, but that could almost be like a good step 2 if you're looking to make some sort of transformation is
for sure. What's
the replacement going to be? And then why am I doing this? I feel like you really got to remember that why, because that's powerful. You know, is it
for sure.
Because you are sick of your belly bouncing if you start running, or is it because you have a person that you feel like you've negatively, whatever it is. You know, I don't know about you if you do this at your house, but if you have I have 2 things that I try to remind myself for the podcast. One is I have a mission statement that's written on a piece of paper. I keep it under the desk every morning before I start work. I pull it out, I reread it, and it just helps me keep focused on like, this is why we're doing this. And then I got a bunch of sticky notes on my, my bathroom mirror as well, because I don't want to forget it. I don't want it to be a fleeting thought. You know, I want it to be in my face every day of like, why am I doing this? Where are we going with it? And for me, that helps ground me. But I don't know, do you and you or your wife, do you guys have any triggers or things that you do on a regular basis to help you remember why you're doing the Fit Foodies app, why you're in the industry you're in, so on and so forth?
Yes and no. I think like, you know, I would say years ago we were big on, you know, writing shit on the mirror, so we see it all the time and those types of things. I think now it's a little bit different, or it's evolved, so to speak. And I think that knowing your why or what you're going for is very important. But I also think challenging that why regularly is more important, so to speak. And it's a hard one for a lot of people to do. And so like saying this is important to me and then remembering that is great. But then comparing what you say you want with the things that you're doing can be very sobering, because it's like, I want to be healthy for, you know, my kids is a very big one for a lot of people. But then if their actions don't align with that, it's like, is it really that important? Because if it was, you would be doing something. Mm-hmm. And so either you have to reprioritize it so that it is a high priority, or you do have to like be honest with yourself and say like, obviously like, unwinding in front of the TV is more important than spending time with my kids in the evening, because that's what I'm doing. And so it's almost like taking a look at the actions that you have and then overlaying them to your why and seeing if they're congruent, right? And if they're not, then you have to ask, what can I do to make sure they are in alignment? Or do I need to change what I'm working towards? Because everything that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis doesn't align with what I say I want. And so it's like, it's more of a check and balance system, right? So it's like, oh, cool, I want this thing. And then does the actions that you have in your life support that? If not, then change your actions to support it, or be honest with yourself that like you really don't want it that bad. And sometimes I think having the things written down help to keep it at the forefront so that your actions do align with the things that you want. But you have to check and measure against what you're doing versus what you want, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I heard this quote in a different podcast. I'll have to Google it when I fact check some stuff for this episode to see who said it. But it was essentially that the mind doesn't change the mind, the body changes the mind. In conjunction with that quote, there is another guest on that made a joke about how she is like, I think I might be really depressed. but I'm too busy to notice it. You know, I wake up, I go to the gym, I go to my job, I go hang out with friends. And so like that depression might still be underlying in there somewhere, but I'm so on the go, I don't have time to give my depression any attention. And,
For sure.
And she said it in a healthy way. She wasn't like suppressing it or ignoring it. She's simply taking action every day. And for me, I like, take today, for example. I woke up, went on a walk with the dog, got to prep today's episode for lunching, then sitting down with you, going to go to the gym after this, and then tonight me and a buddy are going to go get some barbecue, and Theo Vaughn's in town. He's a stand-up comedian.
Nice.
And we're going to go laugh our asses off with Theo and 1,000 other Texans, and it's going to be a super good day, you know? And I was thinking, when I was walking the dog this morning, I was thinking, like, during COVID, I got really frustrated. I was really afraid. I got laid off for the first time in my life. And even though it was due to the pandemic, it's not because I wasn't performing. It was because there was a fucking global crisis on our hands, you know? But I still blame myself. I still mentally flogging myself of like, this is your fault. And the main difference to, you know, fast forward to today is I just keep myself so busy that I almost don't have time to, like, I still get frustrated. I'm not saying life is perfect. You know, my job pisses me the fuck off sometimes. But when you have days like today, when you wake up and within 5 minutes of waking up, you're just genuinely excited for everything that you have lined up, you know, it just, to your point, it's about your actions, right? If you're going to work and then going straight home and popping open the beer and getting in the couch, like, of course you're not going to feel fulfilled, or, you know, I don't know. I'm sort of going on a tangent here with no clear-cut ending, but there it is.
Yeah. Well, and like, I mean, I agree. And I think to some degree for a lot of people, it's like, use what you have, right? Because even like my own journey story, whatever, because like, I would say now in my life, I'm at the point where like, I would appreciate silence more than being busy. Because I get a lot more out of that. But there was a time in my life, like I was talking about before, where it's like I didn't trust myself to be alone, so I stayed busy, right? And so same thing with like you were saying with you know, the lady is like, oh, like I may be depressed, but I'm so busy I don't realize it. And that is a great tool for that current chapter. But you will probably reach a point where it's like going that hard may not be the best, and silence may be what you need, right? And so it's like, hey, if at this time you can't necessarily heal the depression, then go full bore, right? Don't give yourself time to think about it, right? Because like there's nothing that will build confidence more than just doing shit, right? And so like a lot of people spend so much time wondering, worrying, whatever, and they don't do anything. And it's like, you want to get over that? Just do shit. You're like, you'll learn real quick that you're not made of glass, and that you'll learn. So it's fine. But then I do think you'll get to a point where it's like, all right, like, being busy is great, but you'll get so much more growth from the quiet time and the reflection and looking back. And for me, that's where I've had the most growth over years, is like when I've allowed myself the time to stop and think and look back and realize like why I did the things that I did. And that has bbeen more valuable for me than just going.
In this current phase of your life, what do those quiet times look like?
So most of the time for me, it would be a walk. It could be just having a drink out on the patio. Sometimes it's, you know, reading. It looks a little bit different depending on where I'm at now that we're settling in here in Austin. I like to wake up before my wife and just have time for myself. And so it's either just 1,000% quiet, or I'm reading something, or I'll have a cigar and a cup of coffee and then call it good. But it's something that just allows me the space to be able to think. So not on social media, not watching TV, not doing anything that's going to pull my attention, just allow my thoughts to come. And so that could be a walk. It could be reading can interfere with that, but sometimes it's thought provoking, right? So like it could also be a podcast or something audible where it's like, all right, cool. What's going to get my juices flowing, so to speak. But most of the time for me, it's just sitting in silence. That's something that like I got very familiar with on the short term that I was locked up, because it was just like you couldn't do anything else. And so just like allowing yourself to be with yourself and let your thoughts come and then face them. It can be a very good thing. So for me, most of the time, it's just waking up before my wife or going to bed after her, and being in silence so that I can listen to my own thoughts.
There you go. I like it. Gonna switch gears here and talk about nutrition a little bit because that's such a big thing, right? Yeah. Like you said, it's so easy to go to the gym. I go every day. There's a ton of people there. There's gyms everywhere. So if you have a relatively good job and you can pay for a gym membership and you live in a city where there's plenty of gyms, that's the easy part. Okay, I'm gonna go sign up and I'm gonna go move. And then there's the other half of the battle, maybe more than half, maybe it's 60% of the battle, and it's what happens in this room right here, which is the kitchen. Yeah. Well, what do you think? There's a few different trails we can go down here, and I can edit this so the transition flows a little bit more smoothly, but would you want to talk about either some, like, one or two misconceptions you found about food or when it comes to nutrition, how should we transition this?
I mean, one of the things I always like to say is, like, the easiest thing to break people's, like, minds, so to speak, is that all diets are the same, right? Even though everyone thinks that there's a specific diet that works for them, they're all the same fundamentally, right? What they do is they help you to restrict calories, right? And they work until they don't, because, like, if you're going to go keto, then it's like in the beginning, you challenge yourself to think of things that you can eat that don't involve carbs, and you reduce, an entire, macronutrient from your body, and it restricts calories. And then you get to the point where it's like, all right, I figured out that I could eat a buttload of cheese, and then that deficit is now gone, right? But the thing that all diets have in common is that it's just a way to restrict calories. And so, like, if you can get to the point where you understand that, then it's like you can still restrict calories and enjoy the things that you want. And so figuring out, like, how do you make that happen for yourself? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's like, because, like, you could be in a calorie deficit and have a drink, right? Like, we're having a drink right now. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to add extra weight. Me, for myself, I account for 1 or 2 drinks every day, like, and that's fine. It's not 30 beers a day, and they're accounted for. I think the danger for most people is that they don't know how to account for stuff, so it's easier just to eliminate it, especially when it comes to alcohol, right? Because like, so it's like, oh, I don't know how to account for a pizza, so it's just easier not to fucking have one. I don't know how to account for a drink, so I'm just not going to have one. And that's like great, but abstinence only gets you so far, or like sustaining from something is great. But if it's something that you enjoy, it's going to come back. Yes. And then if you don't know how to account for it, then the results will fade and the weight that you lost will come back. And so you have to figure out, like, how to manage the two. And most of the time it's just about raising awareness and figuring out how to account for the things that you enjoy.
The thing too with going cold turkey, and I'd love to if you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, is that I'm going to say when you fail, not if, when. So I'm going to cut out pizza for the rest of my life because I want to have a 20-pack like you do, and I feel like that's my biggest weakness is pizza and nachos. Eventually, I'm going to go to let's say a Stars hockey game with my buddies, and I'm going to see those nachos, and it's going to be the moment, and I'm going to eat those nachos, and then I'm going to be driving home and flogging myself because I feel like I just fucked up. Yeah. And so, I might... I don't want to say spiral, like I'm not going to go into this deep dive of depression because of that nachos, but like then I might see myself as a failure and then be like, well, fuck it, I did it once, so may as well just go back to how my diet was again. But it sounds like you would almost more, for lack of a better term, preach the moderation. That's instead of getting a plate and filling it up with all, this giant, disgusting amount of nachos. Why don't I count calories for all my meals, measure what I'm putting on there? Is that sort of what you're getting at a little bit? I would say that's probably an easy way to say it, but like I'm like, if you want an ungodly amount of nachos, then figure out how you can make it happen, right? Like, so like the way I would like to, like I talk about it to people is like, sure, like for me having a beer or two every day works, right? For some people it's like once they're like Pringles, like once you pop, the fun don't stop. So it's like I gotta have like 10 beers if I'm going to be drinking. It's like, all right, cool. Then don't drink all week and have 10 beers on the weekend, right? And so like it's not as simple as moderate what you have from day to day. It like our bodies don't reset at midnight. They don't reset after a week. Like it works on a continuum, right? Everything will come out in the wash. So if you understand what your calories need to be on an average, then it doesn't matter if all of those calories come on a single day or over 3 days, or evenly distributed throughout the fucking week. Like, it doesn't really matter, right? So, like, once you understand that fundamentally, then it's like, oh, cool.
like if you want, like for me, easy way to do it is like when I'm, working, we'll say Monday through Friday, I'm fairly low calorie, fairly like dialed in because most of the time I'm focused on work. On the weekends, that leaves me more room for more food. So it's like, all right, cool. Like if during the week I'm eating 2,000 calories, like I also, full disclosure, I have a large swing before I start gaining weight. So like take that into consideration. Whereas like in order for me to lose weight, I have to be sub 1,700 calories. I can eat up to 4,500 calories a day and not gain weight. So like that's a huge swing. Mm-hmm. But that means that like I can eat 2,000 calories a day during the week and eat 6,000 calories on the weekends, weekend days, and not gain any weight, right? So it's like that's fine. Those numbers are gonna be different for everyone, but like the only way to know is to test. And then once you do know, it's like cool. Now I can control that. So that could be 4,000 calories every day for me, or that could be 2,000 calories during the week. And there's been times where I've eaten 10,000 calories on the weekend. And like, yes, you will see a little bit of like water weight on Monday and Tuesday, but it'll be gone and you'll have a new low by Friday, right? So like, it doesn't really matter as long as you like, and I'm a big fan of weighing yourself every day because then you can remove outliers and you can see what's actually going on and you can establish a solid trend versus like a single day, which will just be a spike or a low point. But so not as easy as saying, hey, have a little bit of nachos every time. It's like, because like for some people that would make them mad. Like for me, like I'm not going to eat one fucking slice of pizza. And so it's like, if I'm going to account for pizza, I'm going to account for the whole fucking thing. And if that's the case, then it's like, all right, cool. How often can I have pizza if that's the case? If I'm eating the whole pizza, once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever, like, and figuring out what that cadence looks like for you. Because like I said, for some people, like, having one or like I'm not a big fan. It's like, oh, like if you just have a small piece of chocolate every day, it's like, yeah, I would be pissed if all I could have is a small piece of chocolate. Right. So it's like, if you were going to have pizza, how much do you need to have for you to be satisfied? And then, cool, 2 slices, half a pie, whole thing, a large pizza, like whatever it is, great. Figure that out. Mm-hmm. And then cool. How can you have that, and at what frequency can you have that in order to be able to get the result that you want? It's not going to be a whole pizza every day, especially not for most people.
Right.
But you could probably have it more often than you would think, and you could probably and that would probably be more enjoyable than a slice every day, right? And so it's like finding that. I hate this word, but balance for yourself, right? It's like it's the give and take, right? And so like I always relate it to like finances, right? All of your money's not made in a single day and all of your money's not spent on a single day. If you understand your budget, then like who cares, right? Like you can blow all your money on the weekend or you can spend it evenly throughout the week. Like it doesn't matter as long as you don't overdraw your account. That's all that really matters. And so like when it comes to nutrition, if you look at it like that, it's easy.
That's a great analogy. I've never heard that one, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, so it's like, know your budget, stick with your budget, that's fine. And every once in a while, if you do dip into your reserves, great. As long as you know that the next check is going to cover it, you're clear, right? But if you push too far into the negative, that's when things get bad.
And you bring up a good point, too, that as much as I love nachos, I have no desire to eat nachos 7 days a week. I don't even have a desire to eat nachos once a week. Yeah. It's probably once a month where I get this it's usually an event. It is what I just described. It is me and the boys are going to a hockey game, and I know that at this hockey game, along with yelling at the crowd, I want to drink a couple beers, and I'm going to get some nachos, and I'm going to enjoy every one of those fucking chips.
Yeah, and so like, and to some degree, like even if you didn't like have a strict idea of what your quote unquote numbers are for weight fluctuation, but if it's like, all right, cool, like. We'll use normal American whatever, right? So it's like, 2,500 calories a day or 2,000 calories a day is what I need to sustain life, right? And not gain weight. And so it's like, if I know that on the weekend I'm going to go to a hockey game or some day during the week I'm going to go to the hockey game and I'm going to have a couple beers and some nachos or whatever, then just restrict 500 calories a day leading up to that. Then it gives you, a couple thousand calories extra on that day to just go nuts, right? I would say the quote unquote danger for this is some people's like, it's as easy as like restrict and binge, but that's not how it works. It's not going crazy and it's not like depriving and then overdoing. It's a calculated thing, very similar to like planning your finances for a vacation. You save up for it, then you enjoy it, and there's no repercussion, right? It's like you have to know what that looks like. And so in the beginning, it's just having a target that you hit every day, see how your body responds to it. If it's responding positively, then great for the average, and then you can move those numbers around throughout the week, however you want to meet your need. The only like caveat to that would be is just making sure that you're also prioritizing protein. So it's like, all right, cool. Like as long as your protein is at a minimum, and your calorie cap stays whatever it needs to be on an average, then it all works out.
Through the Fit Foodies app, will you guys help find those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
one of the services that you guys will.
Yeah. And so like, we have everything from like, there's a free 2-week challenge that you go in, and like, it's kind of a, we'll say belief breaking challenge where, it's 2 weeks. We give you a meal plan, we give you workouts, we give you everything you need. We even like send you text messages every day, to make sure that you're dialed in, on point, whatever. But we also include desserts, drinks, or snacks every day, right? So like for most people, it's like, oh, they can lose a couple pounds in 2 weeks and have a drink every day or dessert or snack or whatever. It's like, that's amazing. It's like we have that as like a free offer for everyone to just do and see. But then we take a 4-phased approach where it's like first phase is what we call foundation. So it's developing the foundational skills for long-term success when it comes to not eating like a jackass or eating like a jackass and not looking like one. And that's called our foundation phase. And I think a lot of reasons that people fail in diets or with health is because they don't have the skills needed for long-term success. So we help them develop those skills in that phase. Second phase from there is, targeted goals. So we call it focus phase. So whether that's, leaning out, putting on mass, like whatever that looks like. Now that you have the skills, we can put it towards something. After that, rebuilding calories, that phase, and then the final phase is freedom phase, and so the third phase is called fuel. So rebuild calories, make sure that you're good, you know how to fuel your body appropriately to be able to maintain sustained results. Last phase is freedom, and so it's teaching you how to account for all of the things that you enjoy, all that fun stuff. So you could take it each phase at a time. You can jump in, and we have it where it's like you can do all of them at once. We also have one-on-one coaching, but like the reality is for most people, taking the streamlined approach and going through each phase is awesome, and we do our best to keep it as, we'll say, budget friendly as possible. Because owning the gym, and then when I worked for other companies or sold for them or whatever, I think the biggest disservice in this industry is that if you want really good help, it comes at a premium that most people can't afford, right? And so like I've sold fitness programs that range anywhere from $6,000 for the year to $20,000 for 3 months, right? And it's like the average person like can't do that,
right?
Especially not right now. And so for us, like we're very passionate about providing the same level of service that comes with a $6,000 to $20,000 investment, except for it's $150 for 3 months, right? And so it's like fraction of the cost for most people, and it's doable. And if not, we have free options because we want to be able to help people wherever they're at. Right?
That's awesome.
So that's a little bit about what we do and how we do it. But yes, like long answer short, that's exactly what we do with Fit Foodies, is teach people how to account for those things, how to move their targets, macros around to have overall food freedom, so that way they're not scared of eating anything, and if they do gain weight, they know it's not the nachos' fault. So like that's great, right?
I love that term, food freedom.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah, that's what we're all about. Like is food freedom, because so many people I feel like are a slave to their food. Or they live in guilt, or to use your words, they flog themselves if they eat something that is not quote unquote like diet friendly. Mm-hmm. But we were forced to learn how to do things differently when our business was growing. Because like, as you read in the one post, it's like, oh, working out multiple times a day, eating clean, like that's fantastic. Sure. If you can do it. Mm-hmm. But like most people can't. And so like for us, like I could do that up until the point where our gym reached a certain level of success. And then there just wasn't enough time in the day to be able to get all of the shit that I used to do for my health done and manage the business. So it's like, there has to be a more efficient way to maintain or to get results. And like, that's where I worked with. So like, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with Dr. Trevor Kashey, but, or Alex Hormozi. A lot of people nowadays are familiar with Alex. So Trevor is the person that is responsible for the way that Alex looks. So he is the doctor that helped him dial in his nutrition and figure all of that out. We learned from Alex when we were working with him closely in the beginning of the Gym Launch days. And when we were running at a point, it was like, we just can't do this anymore. He was like, hey, if you want to be able to continue to scale your business and not completely shit the bed when it comes to nutrition, talk to Trevor. So we talked to Trevor, and he's the one that helped us figure out, like, all right, there's a simpler way to be more efficient in getting results. So you don't have to work out like a madman. You don't have to be, very restrictive when it comes to eating. So if you understand things simply, then that's exactly what it becomes, simple.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, man, because even with me, I consider myself a relatively disciplined person. And if it's a weekday and my goal is morning, evening walk with the dog, spend 8 hours at my day job, cook a fresh meal, make it to the gym, there's the commute time there's the workout. If it's a leg day, I can easily go for 2 to 2.5 hours.
Oh, yeah.
If I want to sit in the sauna afterwards, that's another 20 minutes, maybe 5 minutes of just sitting after the sauna to let some of the sweat off, or maybe take a quick shower before I go. That's a packed fucking day right there. And so I've even gone through phases of life where I've done, I've played around with like HelloFresh. They're not a sponsor. Maybe I'll cut that out. I've played with meal delivery services, where all the food shows up at your front door, and then that way that eliminates at least going to the grocery store. I did that for about 6 months, and then I miss going to the store. That sounds so weird to say, but there was something about it where I was like, okay, let's get rid. I've also tried companies where the food's already made, so you get 20 frozen meals that show up on your doorstep. And again, it's just time, man, because a healthy lifestyle is, at least for me, maybe I'm doing it wrong, but it's not 24 hours, just it goes by like that.
Yeah. And so, like, a lot of times it's almost reverse engineering it. So it's like, oh, like, how much time do you have? What do you need? How can you get it done in this amount of time, right? So for some people, it's like, oh, like, sure, meal prepping, cooking all your food, like, that is an option. And for some people, going to the grocery store, cool, it is an option. Yep. For some people, it's not, right? Like, some of our clients, like, that's not an option. Like, and even for us, like, when we lived in the gym, we didn't have a fun kitchen. So so we still, and we wanted to be a billboard for our business, right? Like you were saying about the guy, I was like, oh, like the way that he looks promotes his business, or is a life. Like for me, like the last 6 years, like my body has been a billboard for the businesses that we have operated, right? So I was like, how do you maintain that when you don't have a kitchen or when you're on the road all the time, right? So like, we help our clients figure that stuff out. So like, obviously, like there's simple things you can do. Cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, plenty of places do just like prepared meat now. Like one of the things that we love is like Costco, Sam's Club, they have full turkey breasts that are pre-cooked. You can just slice them. Macros are really nice, fairly lean, low fat, high protein, minimal carbs. Same thing, like they even have pre-cooked like cuts of ham. Same thing, like great macros. You can get them, so you get the joy of going to the grocery store, but you also don't have to cook anything. So all you do is you bring the prepared meat home. All you have to do is slice it. For most people, the hard part is protein. So it's like everything else is grab and go. So if you can figure out go-to protein sources that you can grab, whether from the grocery store, show up at the house, like whatever. And even for you, like if it's like time management, some days if you want to go to the grocery store, you can go pick up those prepared meats. If you're slammed on time, those same meats can just be delivered to your fucking house, and then it's all good. Like, who cares?
Right.
And then obviously, like, there's meal delivery service and all that. Like, we've used that a few times when it comes to like traveling, because we can just have it sent to the hotel. It's like, oh, great, we have a bunch of meals delivered to the hotel. Most of the time we do that, though, like, because we're very flexible. It's a matter of having a bunch of protein sent to the hotel, so that way we can hit our protein minimum and then go out and eat, like, jackasses at a restaurant and still be good, right? So it's like, as long as you hit your protein minimum, you don't exceed your calorie cap, you're fine. And so for us, it's like, all right, cool. How can we manage that? And as unsexy as it is, sometimes for me, it's like, all right, a giant tub of Greek yogurt. Great. And then we can go out to a restaurant. Fantastic. Yeah. Like, that's not sexy, and it's not pretty. It's not like whatever, but it is also doable. Like, it doesn't take any time to do that. You can, like, Greek yogurt, you can swing it any way. There can be sweet, it can be savory. You can add like Jordan skinny syrup. You can add hot sauce. You can add meat to it. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like,
meat to it.
Yeah, like you can go. Same thing with cottage cheese. Like, whereas like it can be sweet or savory. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's just a tool, right? So like, figure out how to use it. So that way you can have more freedom on the back end. And so for me, like there has been days where it's like egg whites for breakfast, pizza for dinner, right? Like everyone's like, oh, that sounds miserable. Why not? I enjoy the pizza. Like, who cares?
Right.
And and if that's what it takes, then like just deal with it to some degree, right? But if you want it to be like cuter, sexier, like whatever, you can get crazier, but you potentially like it just takes more work, right? And so it's like you can keep it simple and non-sexy, or you can get all crazy and spend a bunch of time and effort. But like we were saying before, it's managing the lesser of two evils, because one of the things that like we get shit on all the time on social media is that like, because we'll tell like we give tips, hacks for like, all right, like here's a bunch of fast food chains that you can go and get less than 500 calories worth of food with 20 grams or more of protein, and people are like, fast food's horrible for you. Like, okay, but like in comparison to what? Not doing anything, or
right.
to eating like a shittier option. So I was like, most of the time, people just need a place to start, right? And like even for me, like in the beginning, it was just like, all right, drinking 20 beers instead of 30. Like that sounds like horrible advice, but like it's also better than nothing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And for most people, it's a lesser of two evils. Like, and the reason that most people don't start is because they're worried about like, well, I can't go all organic, all whole food. I can't cook all my meals. I can't. It's like who cares? No one's asking you to be perfect overnight.
Right.
Like just do something, right? Like, sure, you can shit on like diet sodas all you want, but changing from regular soda to diet soda can be a huge difference for a lot of people. Or going from like regular juice to light juice or low calorie juice. Like, sure, I don't care. You can shit on all you want, but like the reality is that like the studies that were done against sweeteners and artificial sweeteners are very low quality and they're inconclusive. So it's like it doesn't actually harm. And like the only negative was like in some rats that had pre-existing conditions that consumed amounts that far exceed anything a human could consume, their pre-existing condition got worse. So it's like it doesn't really matter, because unless you have a pre-existing condition that you also add truckloads of stevia to, mm-hmm. you're not going to make anything any worse. So like you're fine. Just drink that. You'll have overall less calories. And we've even like, you've seen our social media. Me and I travel around. We eat outrageous things.
And they look amazing.
Yeah. But like we've had people that like whatever, like this one place we love. It's called Elm Street Diner. The first time we ever went there, they, no joke, brought us a sandwich that was probably 2 feet tall. And it was like the unhealthiest thing versus like short rib, cheese plus mozzarella sticks, Texas toast grilled, and like that stacked on top of each other for 2 feet high, right? So like just insane. And we filmed ourselves eating it, and during that, we're like, oh, can I have another Diet Coke? And so it's like, really, Diet Coke? I was like, yeah, because it does make a difference.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, like I'm eating 6,000 calories worth of sandwich. I also don't need to drink 800 calories worth of a couple sodas. So it's like, if I'm going to have 3 or 4 sodas, I would rather have it be 0 calories, or I'd rather have a beer, because if the calories didn't come from somewhere, I'd rather enjoy it differently. And the soda, for the most part, tastes the same. So it's like, as long as you're good with it, then it's fine.
For me, very quickly, I'll just say that I remember my very first LaCroix I ever had, and I thought it was disgusting, but I also wanted to get away from soda.
Yep.
And if we walk over to my fridge and pop it open right now, I'm obsessed. I got probably 16 different flavors and from 7 different brands of sparkling waters.
Yeah.
I love those things.
Yeah.
And it's to your point that I'm not only am I super proud of myself, that I literally can't remember when I had a soda last. It was 2014 to 2016, somewhere in there, because now I have a new drink that I thoroughly enjoy as long as it's ice cold. That's all I care about. It's ice cold and it's carbonated, and I'm very happy with it. And I have more calories. I didn't think about it, but as you were talking, I was like, now I have those extra calories that I can use on the nachos or whatever the ice cream, whatever it is that you like to eat. For me, it's nachos. That's why I keep saying it.
Yeah. Well, and like, I mean, for me, for myself, we'll say like trying to be calorie conscious. I'll have like quote unquote mocktails, right? So it's like I'll do a ranch water with no tequila. So it's just like, all right, like Topo Chico and lime juice. And it tastes like a ranch water or like a knockoff margarita, except for there's little to no calories in it, right? And if it's a day that I want to get saucy, I'll add tequila. Then like, great. It doesn't taste any different except for it has more calories. And even for a lot of people that we work with, it's like most of the time when it comes to drinks, especially alcoholic, it's just a ritual, right? So like you can come home and you can have a 0-calorie, ice cold, like fuzzy drink or like high carbonated drink and sit on the patio and enjoy it. And you can unwind just like you could if you were having a beer, right? It's like you can have a Topo Chico or a Lime One or whatever it is that you want, ice cold, sit out, give yourself the time to enjoy it, and you're great. Because realistically, like, unless you're pounding 30 beers, you're not really getting buzzed or like unwind, like you're not feeling the effects.
Right.
So it's like
you gotta have a couple.
It's just a ritual, right? And so for most people, it's like they want to give themselves permission to sit down, to be quiet, to have a drink, to do whatever. It's like, cool. Give yourself permission and have a diet soda, or have a seltzer water, or like whatever it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to have alcohol in it. But that also circles back to like, if you want to change a habit, like replace it with something. It's like, all right, cool. Like when you come home from work, you want to drink something. So like, what's it going to be? And try it. See what happens. It could be Topo Chico and you could love it. You could try that and you could hate it. Like now they have like 50,000 like near beers or like hop waters or like fake whatever. I've had a few. None of them have been that good. So like full disclosure, like if you try them and you find one that you like, let me know.
Yep.
But most of them, they taste like hibiscus water. So it's like, oh, you might as well just have like a hint fucking water or a LaCroix or whatever. But for us, like me and my wife love like mineral water or like fizzy water, and then we just flavor it however we want, like Jordan skinny syrup or lime juice or whatever. Because you can get the plain version and you can add whatever you want, like Jordan skinny syrup or all of those things. They have like everything from like mojito to peach, orange, whatever flavor you want. And there's no calories. You just add it to it. You can change it up however you want. You can make it a strong or not as you want. And so like for us, that's always how we push it. That's how we tell our people to go. It's like, all right, at least try it. Because what's the worst that can happen, right?
Yeah. Yep. I agree 100%. Mickey, anything else we should discuss?
You tell me. Anything else that you would like to know, to ask?
Well, we're at 201, so I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, no, I mean, we can go for a little bit longer if you have something you want to ask. If not, then we can wrap it here.
If you don't mind, yeah, sure. I'll throw one more question your way.
Yeah.
So just to give everyone, I honestly don't know who's listening to this. I see the numbers and I know who a few of them are, but there's a lot of people listening. I have no idea who they are. So I like to give everyone one immediate thing where maybe if you're on a budget restriction or, you just need something small to start with. What's something from this episode that you can take away and start doing right away? One of your posts on Instagram was the 8 benefits of walking, which are it burns body fat, lowers blood sugar, lowers triglycerides, boosts blood flow to the brain, reduces and prevents back pain. I know that's huge. That's the thing for me. Improves mood and creativity, strengthens heart, bones, and muscles, and strengthens relationships if you happen to be doing it with someone. I love that post because walking's so easy. Like if you're in a wheelchair, like different situation, but I feel like most of the listeners probably can walk. So you can get out, you can leave your front door today and go for a 10, 20, 30, 40-minute walk and get all those benefits. The only one that I had no idea what it was, I was hoping you could speak to a little bit. What is blood flow to the brain?
So I think it's just blood flow. Might have been a typo.
Okay,
Might have been a typo.
What is this term?
Yeah.
I want to know, because I go on 2 walks a day, so I was like, what is this? I want to know what blood flow is.
Yeah, so if you do blow, if you do blow, it's so much better if you go for a walk first.
Okay.
Other than that, if you're cocaine free, then it's just blood flow.
Okay. What about so lowering blood sugar? I've heard that term, and of course I could just go Google it, but I knew you were going to show up today. Why is that a good thing? Because I honestly I can read those words, but I don't really know what it means for me.
Can you clarify the question?
Yeah, what is it? Why is it a good thing to lower your blood sugar?
So for most people, the biggest benefit is going to be increased insulin resistance. So like. And it'll make you more carb tolerant. Like everyone these days, like, oh, I can't have carbs. It's not whatever. Like general overall movement will help stabilize your blood sugar or lower it. So that way, if and when you do eat something that would normally spike your blood sugar, it's not going to spike it. So you're not going to have the peaks and valleys, so to speak. And so it's just going to make it better for overall even energy throughout the day. So like a lot of times the noticeable side effects for increased blood sugar or a crash would be heightened energy and then a valley, right? Like a lot of people think like, oh, like I need an energy drink. It's probably because you have a discrepancy in your blood sugar or you've bottomed out, right? So like if you're walking or you have constant movement, you'll feel better sustained energy throughout the day.
Gotcha. Good.
Yeah. So, but going for a walk is great. And that like for a lot of people, when we first work with them, like that, like if someone were to go through our foundation phase, that is the first thing that we focus on for week 1 and week 2. It's just like schedule a walk, go for a walk. Doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, like whatever you can do. It doesn't matter if it's every day or every other day, like whatever it is that you can realistically do, just do that. And like for some people, they start out with like from their place to the corner. They just walk to the corner and back. And like those types of things will develop a habit and they'll start to go further and further, or they'll show us, oh, I want to do something more. So like to your point, great place to start. Doesn't cost any money. It's just a little bit of time and it's not a large time investment. It's just like, all right, cool. The second thing that I would do in regards to free and doesn't take much time is I would challenge everyone listening to just start tracking with some form of like MyFitnessPal or something that allows you to track your calories. Just see what you're consuming on a regular basis because it gives you something to adjust from. A lot of times people start a diet and they're just like, oh, I want to do all these things, but they have no idea where they're starting from. And so like a lot of times when we work with people, even on a one-on-one basis, we take them through what we would call a calibration, where it's just like a week or two of tracking what they normally eat so that we can see what their calorie consumption is and we can adjust from there. Because it's a lot easier to fine-tune from a base than it is to just completely try to rebuild the engine without knowing anything. So for us, it allows us to like just do a tune-up versus like overhaul the engine. So it's like, all right, if you're down to monitor to see, test yourself, and like there is no right or wrong way to measure, to track, to establish this baseline. And so like download a fitness tracker like MyFitnessPal or something that's free that you're comfortable with and you enjoy, and just start tracking. The one thing that we always joke is like anything that you put in your mouth that's not your significant other, track it. And then it's good. It'll give you a baseline to be able to adjust from. So those are 2 places to start. Obviously, if you want to hit us up, Fit Foodies in the App Store. It's a black and pink logo, and there's a 2-week free challenge. It's a Fit with Food challenge. It includes drinks, desserts, all that fun stuff. We do have some promos on other stuff right now, but like if you start there, we're always down to help.
I like that. I like that too. Even on your Instagram, you have so many helpful tips, such as how do you track the peanut butter on the spoon that you're licking off. So even just your free Instagram page has a ton of good tips for how you can start getting accurate counts of literally everything you're eating and consuming. That's not your significant other. Yeah. So
I would say like the biggest one, like we'd kind of touch on the throughout this entire episode, would be alcohol. And so there is in our app, there's a free resource that you can like click on if you like beer, that allows you to be able to it's basically a home brewer app, but allows you to be able to put the alcohol percentage or the ABV of a beer, how many fluid ounces that you drank, and that'll tell you how many calories it is, because most beers won't tell you the calories. But for alcohol itself, if you know the calories of the drink that you're doing, you just basically equate them all for carbs, then it's good. So like the common misconception is that like people get like a White Claw and it says like, 2 grams of carbs. It's like, that's bullshit. If it's 100 calories, then I would just account for it as 25 grams of carbs. So like whatever the calorie is, divide it by 4, and that's how many carbs it's going to take up from your overall intake. And so like a lot of drink companies or alcohol companies like to advertise as like, this many net carbs or this many carbs, this, that, whatever. It's all BS because they can get away with it legally. But if you know the calories, whatever it is, divide it by 4. That'll let you know how many carbs it is. If you're just counting calories, then all you need to know is the calories anyways. But if you're doing full blown macros, that definitely helps. And then that'll allow you to be able to account for it appropriately. Because as I said, like, that's where most people slip up is like, oh, I scanned my Corona and it told me 2 carbs and I'm still good. It's like, well, you're shitting the bed if that's what you're doing. So like,
Right.
understand the overall calorie footprint, divide it by 4, and you're good.
Beautiful. There it is. Mickey, this has been so good. Thank you for coming on. I really enjoyed hearing your story, listening to a little bit about Fit Foodies app, and even just some very practical advice. I don't even know what my calorie count is. I might do it for myself for a couple weeks just to get an idea. And my eating habits too are pretty repetitive. So for someone like me, it would be relatively easy to get that number. I don't know what it is, but
and for most people like yourself, if it's the same thing all the time, the only difference in tracking is like putting your plate on a fucking scale before you load it up. Or like if you're loading up a to-go container, it's like put it on there. Like that's the only step different. Like if all your stuff is the same, and the really cool thing about that, if you have a structured routine that you're following, is that like you only have to do that once. Because if you're eating the same thing all the time, that allows you to say, all right, cool, this is what I'm doing. And then if you want some more flexibility when it comes to, hockey games or nights out or whatever, then you know how you can adjust throughout the week. All right, a little less veggies or a little less rice, a little more meat or whatever. So that way the nachos at the game don't have a negative effect.
Right. Love it. All right, everyone, go check out Mickey. If you want to hop on over to the YouTube version real quick, I will put all of his different Instagram handles for both the app as well as his personal one. He's pretty easy to find, though. Is your Instagram handle, do you recall, is it just Mr. 20 Pack?
Yep, Mr. 20 Pack. Mr. then 20 Pack.
Perfect. There you go. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, I loved it. I think we touched on a lot of really interesting things and a lot of really important things that some people might need to hear. So if you enjoyed it as well, please do us a favor and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen, whether that's Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're on YouTube, you could help us out by subscribing. So take one of those little actions if you would. It costs 0 cents and about 10 seconds of your time, and I would be incredibly grateful for it. So thank you so much. In the meantime, everyone, have a healthy and happy Saturday night, and we will see you next week for another episode. Bye, everybody.